Good day, everybody, and welcome. It looks like we are just getting started just past the hour here, and people are rolling in. I hope everybody can see my screen. I see we got a few participants that have joined already. Isaac is here together with me, and we're excited to walk through this topic of push and pull strategy today, and as it pertains to our recent release for our platform of Intranet Connections. Just a quick introduction. I'm sure some of you have already met Isaac, have talked to him, and have some existing projects that you're evaluating how to improve your internal communications environment. We're looking forward to continuing those conversations. We welcome some new people here that maybe haven't had direct conversations with our team yet. My name's Rob. I'm the CEO of Intranet Connections. I've been working with Intranet Connections for a number of years, and in intranets generally for over 15 years, doing in-house custom-built intranets for previous organizations, and then moving into more turnkey solutions in the software industry. So we worked with a lot of companies over these years from different sectors, and we'll get into that a little bit more. Isaac, I don't know if you want to quickly just introduce yourself to the audience.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm Isaac. I work with our customers to evaluate their internal environments and implement smart technology solutions. So looking forward to getting into some strategy today and how we can help.
Awesome, thanks. So let's just recap a little quickly the agenda. We got a packed content today. First thing I'd like to do is just quickly to reintroduce Intranet Connections. Some of you may know us as IC Thrive. We recently just relaunched a brand new website and went back to our roots, which our name was Intranet Connections, and we started in 1999. And we were one of the first players in this market. And we really wanted to clarify our intentions and reunify all of the functionalities of our platform. And so we thought that this was really conducive to do that. I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the modern or current communication challenges today that our customers are facing in conversations we're having with people around their environment. We're going to summarize that and get deeply and discuss push versus pull strategy. So what's the difference? Intranets are generally looked at more as the pull strategy. So we're not going to talk so much about intranet today. We're going to focus a little bit more on push strategies and how those help to leverage your intranet. I'm going to give a quick overview of some examples of channels and what categories they typically fall into, whether that's push or pull, and some examples of how those are used. We're going to go through some live demonstration and show you examples from different stakeholders that use intranet, whether or not you're in maybe HR, an IT leader, you're maybe more marketing communications. I'm going to give you some different examples that you can draw on and give you some inspiration around how you could use this feature and a push strategy on top of your intranet. As we go along, I definitely want to encourage people to share questions. We have a Q&A enabled on the webinar here, so you can share questions either in name or anonymously. If you're seeing questions up there, you can vote them up for us to answer later. And Isaac will be tallying those and bringing those to my attention near the end of the webinar. And we'll make sure to try to address those. And we look forward to your feedback. And hopefully we can address as many questions as possible at the end of the webinar. So as I mentioned, we just relaunched as Intranet Connections. A little bit about us. We've been working in this for over 23 years and have served over 1,600 customers in that time. We have over 100,000 active users daily using their intranet to connect with the organization, to look up job tools and resources, and to support productivity, engagement, and those sorts of things. Our customers generally have been with us for a very long time. We work very closely with customers and really try to serve their needs. And because of that, we've built up a lot of understanding of best practices for different industries. And in doing so, we've actually pre-built different out-of-the-box templates. So a pre-built intranet based on the information architecture, workflows, examples of forms and design and sites that you would have in, say, a financial environment, a healthcare environment, or more generally in a corporate environment. And so if you're engaging with us and looking at different types of options, you can see lots of examples. We have many examples of customer stories on our intranet, so I encourage you to check those out and see some different examples of designs as well. So the topic today is really push communications. The latest release of our platform, which is 15.5, is really around bringing a push strategy along with your pull strategy of your intranet. Now, why does that matter? The reason that this matters is because today the world is quite noisy in different channels. We have different generations, And I'm going to touch on that in a moment. And so it's really cumbersome to try to connect with people in so many different channels, and there's a lot of distraction. That being said, because we have all these different channels at our disposal, if we can employ a multi-channel strategy, we can be much more effective at getting attention and getting a higher response rate from people by touching them in the relevant channels, and ideally preferred channels that they like to use. So that comes back to the movement more towards personalization and serving our end users and meeting them where they want to be met. Some people like certain channels and some people like others. So what we have found is some research online is that the average response rate is almost 40% higher using a multi-channel strategy versus a single channel strategy for your communications. So we prepped a little poll question here for the audience. Maybe you could just do a quick self-assessment on how do you think that your response rate looks today? So when you typically send out some employee communications about something that's happening in the organization, an announcement, an update, some event, what do you think your average response rate is? Maybe you don't know, maybe you don't have metrics, and that's okay. If you don't know and don't have any insight or some averages there to benchmark from, then that's fine, but don't know. If you have a fairly high response rate, probably you're going to be in that over 15%. Generally, though, it probably, depending on organization size, there's contextual side of this too, like what's the context, the message that's being sent will affect your response rate. But on average, what do you think your response rate looks like today? So we're seeing about 9 people respond, a bit of mixture. Probably about half don't really know. So maybe you don't have any of the tooling in place to actually know with communications that are being sent over email or Teams or different channels, how people are responding to that. And that's a common thing. So we'll touch on one of the gains today in terms of the benefits of insight and some other stats here. So thanks for participating in that. It's great to get some audience interaction. I don't know if you want to stop there and we'll keep going as people are rolling in. So what I would like to talk about here is just really what is push strategy versus pull strategy. And the screen's just showing up a little bit here. Bear with me one sec. So again, what are some of the challenges that we're facing and where push strategy comes into play? Now, there was some research done by Microsoft back in 2015, which was quite interesting. And because of this digital world that we're exploding into and all the different distractions and messages that we're facing literally constantly like this, our attention spans as people is generally waning and going less and less. I'd probably harp that it's less than 8 seconds today than it was in 2015. Probably people would agree. But the point of that is you really don't have a lot of time to get attention. And so because of that, how do you create messaging or content that stands out? How do you create messaging that really quickly cuts through the noise and people understand, do I want to engage or not engage with that content? The funny thing from that article was the attention span, they say, of a goldfish is about 9 seconds. So us humans were kind of lagging behind goldfish. There's probably some more color to that, but the other part is generations. We have a very diverse workforce today, more generations in the active workforce than ever before because generational changes are getting slower and slower, or shorter and shorter in terms of paradigm shifts and different expectations or experiences of consuming content and media in our regular lives, the kinds of tools we use. And so whether or not people are, traditionalists and more used to, maybe grew up on things like radio and audio, phone conversations and direct versus, meetings or video or very quick like Snapchat or, these types of different things that are out there. There's a lot of different experiences and expectations on how to serve up content from different generations, and just some fun examples of different ways the phone's evolved. And obviously we're now getting to the point where we have just voice type of interfaces, and that's evolving a lot too in the workplace. So how do we continue to stay current with our content and engage people in different mediums? The other one is reminders. We kind of feel like we're constantly nagging people. We don't have as much of that maybe in-office presence or impromptu encounters, opportunities, and those more rich interfaces. How do we create reminders? Because there's such short attention, things come our way and maybe we can't act on that right now. Maybe I need to park that for later. How do we maintain that kind of communication or content somewhere that I can actually recall that and do so? And so what happens right now is with a lot of push communications is they can get lost. And it's really hard to recall and find out like, hey, I know there was something I was supposed to do, or I was asked to do this. How do I do that? And as communicators, what we're constantly finding is we're feeling like we're wearing the role of chief reminder officer. And what that means is we're out there nagging, looking up logs and trying to figure out who to communicate back with. What if we can more automate some of these things and get some insight, understand what kind of engagement we're getting on our messaging and who to follow up with, and tailor our communications to be more effective in getting responses. So as we explored how to solve some of these things, we looked at with our users and discussed with customers, what are some of the functional problems we're trying to address? So one of the main things is right now with several channels that we're managing, whether that's intranet, Teams, email, maybe SMS, there's different, obviously, channels of meetings like town halls or different types of digital or even non-digital channels like in-office experiences of signage or things like that. It's really cumbersome right now to create a cohesive strategy that connects those together. And so people are manually posting content here, and then they're having to copy that and link it here and reinforce their message very manually. And it's very time consuming. And so is there a way that we could actually bring these systems together so that the tools can do a lot of this work for us, and we don't have to do a lot of that kind of manual work? One of the other challenges typically with intranet is notifications are usually just email or site alert, but there's different types of priority of messages. Sometimes I have more urgent communications and I need to get that over other types of channels. Example, SMS, more push-like channels like Teams or group chat systems, social channels like Slack or other tools like that. And so can we create some channel strategy based on message priority or urgency versus normal preferences, where we want to more cater to maybe the employee's preference of communications? So how do we balance that between the organization and the end user? Another thing that we commonly hear from people is visibility and insight. So with a lot of communications, and as we saw just in the poll right now, about half of us really don't have a lot of insight on our communications, on what people are engaging with, what's relevant to them, getting their feedback, those kinds of things, and understanding how our content is being accessed from different channels. And so what we want to do is solve for that and bring some visibility. Now, coming back to a little bit bigger picture and what is push versus pull, I've already kind of described a little bit that intranet's typically seen as a pull strategy. It's a place that you're trying to create. It's almost like an internal storefront for your organization, where you're trying to reinforce the brand, the identity, the culture, and also give job aids and resources and tools for people to be effective in doing their work. And if you can do these both things together, then it can be a very effective channel, a pull channel, that when people are there to do things, they also engage with other communications or content or across the teams and locations and that sort of thing. So it's a bit more on the pull strategy. It's generally designed as a more broad channel. You start with a home page, which is designed for all staff generally. And maybe you have some different specific sites that are carved out for different groups. But again, it's relying on people to kind of go there and kind of look and self-serve. Now, the nice thing about pull channels and the internet is that they are lasting strategies. So generally, when you're publishing content or communications there, it's evergreen and it can live on, and you can have version control, governance, archiving, and cleanup, and that retention very good. Whereas with push channels, typically it's more about speed. It's a speed strategy. It's around quickly getting communications out to the right audiences and really trying to personalize and tailor your communications to those you're talking to. So that's a little bit of the differences. I'm going to walk through some examples. Now, it's important to say that these strategies are not exclusive of one another. It's important to have both strategies work in parallel and in tandem. Effective communications platform is going to be based on using both of these strategies at the same time. So maybe you're doing better in one side or the other. Maybe you're strong today in pull strategy, or maybe you're stronger in push, but that's something to reflect on as we go through here. So we had one more quick poll question here, just to ask you a little bit about your pull strategy today. Maybe if you could give us some insight on how do you feel about, in terms of push communications and a push strategy, how do you think you're doing today? Do you feel like you have a good channel definition, understanding within your organization around what channels are used for what purposes, and have set up maybe templates or examples of how to use push communications in times of need to get more attention or to get response rates up, and that sort of thing. Looks like we've got about 8 people that have filled in so far. Hopefully we can get a few more responses in here. One other point too, push versus pull, in terms of the employee experience, there's almost an expectation with the pull strategy that as people onboard, they're going to self-serve, navigate the internet, learn about your organization, look up resources, and discover things through search and that sort of mechanism. The difference with push strategy is it's really around full service. Think about going to the gas station and saying, hey, I just showed up for work and onboarding, and how do I start to serve up content and relevant communications? It's more of a full service experience and trying to be more proactive in our communications and the needs of our audiences. All right.
Results are in there, Rob.
So results, if you're sharing them back there, what we see here is, a mix of results, not surprising, ranging from kind of some that are strong to some that are maybe okay to not so strong. And that's probably why you're here today. So it's good just to get a sense of where that is. And now as you go through, get some ideas on how maybe you can strengthen your push strategy. All right. So let's just walk through a few examples. This is the intranet I'm actually going to show you today. It's our financial template. And it's going through we're going to go through some examples from different stakeholders in the organization, whether or not you're in, HR, technology leader, maybe more marketing communications function. What are some different ways of using this intranet channel, which is generally a pull channel. And as I mentioned, it's really there we've got this example, which is called The Wave. This is Blue Water Financial. It's a fictitious organization. And they've created some branding and some cohesive experience around their intranet and their identity, and sharing some top stories, resources, what's going on in the organization. It's a really effective tool for people to understand what's going on, daily access that, get any relevant updates, consume in a kind of almost digestive way that there's multiple things that may be of interest. And if you're in different departments, maybe you're going to navigate to different areas and get pulled into certain sub areas of your intranet. Now, the purpose of this channel is really to build up that source of truth. It's really to reinforce your content and your communications and become a place of authority. So that's really the crux of this channel. Now, if we switch over to some other types of channel examples, group chat, probably a number of you are using some different group chat tools or social chat type tools. It might not be Teams, it might be Slack, it might be Cisco Jabber, it might be other things within your VoIP solution, it might be Teams Phone, or it might be more heavily embedded in Teams. Those are kind of generally more push channels because they're ones that people are getting native notifications in, and they're rich collaboration. So they're in there a lot. And so there's a lot of opportunity to get attention quickly. So generally one of the keys to success here is really to be clear on channel purpose. You can quickly have many chats, many channels, content or communications coming into channels that are not on topic. And so it can become sometimes a governance challenge. And so, but they are very effective for teamwork and that social interaction or productivity. So there's pros and cons to each one of these channels, whether they're push or pull channels. And generally the purpose here is collaboration. Just giving some examples here, and I'll show you some live demonstration of that. Another push channel that maybe some of you use today, but not very often, maybe more in emergency or more urgent situations, and whether or not you have any kind of tool to facilitate this for you, is text messaging. And so text messaging is, and depends, like some people might have devices that may support text or to have data plans. And so there might be some different challenges here. But the pro side of text messages and SMS is they are very strongly, they get a lot of relevance in terms of a push communications. people will pay attention, much more attention to a text message generally than to other channels. And so you're seeing more adoption of text messages into things like internal communications for times of need or more urgent types of communication. Now, for them to be successful, it's important to ensure there's accessibility. So the communications that are coming over an SMS, text message to a mobile device, need to be mobile responsive, need to be easy to digest, quick to understand what's happening and that sort of thing. So I've just put an example here of a recent communication we did last week. We had gone through some change with our Zoom environment with our rebrand from IC Thrive to Intranet Connections. And we had some disruption that were affecting our front lines, and we really needed to get that message out quickly. This is exactly what that user experience would have been like for people consuming on SMS. Now, the purpose of SMS is typically notification. You're really trying to get mass alerting out there to people and really being efficient and getting that quick communication out. And the last example I'm going to touch on, which is probably the most ubiquitous and adopted that everybody uses, is email. Email is quite a versatile tool, no doubt, and that's why it's been such a strong tool for so many years. And it offers a lot of ability to format content. I'm giving you an example here of an email that's formatted from the push communications I'm going to show you integrated into our intranet platform. But obviously you can format emails in many different ways. There's a lot of different options. You can embed videos, you can have lots of content. There's so many things you can do with it. The challenge with email is it's a very noisy channel. People are getting communications, their customer communications, vendor, partner, cross team, cold emails. There's junk, phishing attacks. There's a lot of emails that are going out there. And the thing there is it can be quite a versatile tool for providing more detailed instructions directly to people in a more push-like channel. And it is a great tool for people's own self reference. What I mean by that is, if Isaac sends me something, some update, I'm going to treat something over email a little bit more formally, and I'm not going to expect that he wants an immediate response, but it's something I can refer to later. I can action, and I understand clearly probably what he wants me to do. So it's a good reference tool, but it is a challenge in terms of that those things can sometimes get lost, outdated content, that sort of thing. So there's pros and cons to it, of course, but it's generally seen as a push channel or strategy to use email. So from that, what I want to do is actually get to the meat of the presentation, which is actually showcasing you. How could you actually do some communications using these different channels and adopting both a push strategy alongside your pull strategy of your intranet? So let's hop into it. Let's get into a live demo. I'm going to just pull up my intranet here. Hopefully everybody's still seeing this. Thumbs up, Isaac. I hope you can see that. Good. Okay, great. I'm not monitoring the chat, so hopefully there's some chat. Again, just if there's any questions as we come along, if you have questions around what you're seeing, how that works, things around what I was just presenting in terms of some of the more like best practices and tips around things, please share those and we'll definitely address those later. So this is an intranet that's been built out that has some examples of some best practices of updates and organizational updates or generated content that's being shared across the organization or to different teams. Maybe some user-generated content, things like peer nominations around Starfish Awards or water cooler conversations and that sort of thing. And obviously your intranet, or it may look different than this, but this is just an example to get started. Now, I'm going to run through one example here of doing some communications. Now, remember, push strategies are generally not all staff. You're generally trying to target specific audiences, share information. And when you're communicating, there's usually one of three things you're trying to do. You're trying to create awareness or get people to know something. You want them to do something, or maybe you want them to feel something related to something that's happening in the organization. So in this case, I want people to know something. I'm going to be acting as HR, and imagine we're working on a return to work guideline or something like that. So I've updated a guideline here, a document. Now, if I upload a document to the intranet, one of the things that I can do is I can then push communications around that to different audiences. So you're seeing this new this bar that happens across the bottom of the screen. And if I want to, I can send out a message to a target audience. So what I'm going to do here is browse and grab an image. Pictures and graphics, some visual aspect are definitely a good practice to reinforce your message. The saying, obviously, a picture speaks 1,000 words, is quite relevant. So I'm just going to grab a graphic that I had from before. And you can do different cropping. You can pull from different online sources if you want. Always great to use some actual branded imagery if you can. But this is just an internal quick promotion to some different members. Now, what I want to do is I want to send this to my leaders and my managers. And why I'm doing that first is maybe this isn't actually a live guideline yet. I've been working this as a draft with them. But what I'm asking them is to socialize this within their team meetings. And so I'm going to send out a communication saying, here's some detailed plans on a return to office. Please, if you can socialize I'm just going to put something like that. Now, I haven't gone through some of the setup of this feature around channel strategy and how that works, but generally with the way channel strategy works in this configuration is based on message priority. The way I've configured this feature is if it's a normal priority message, it's going to be based on the user's preference. So maybe for Isaac, he likes Teams as his preferred channel for communication. Maybe for me, it's email. And I'm going to show you an example of 2 different people that are going to get this in different ways. I'm going to send this to myself. I'm logged in as Kelly right now as well, just so you can see how I get this in Teams. And so it's based on that channel strategy of preference. If it was more of a urgent communication, then that would have a different channel strategy. And I'll show you later, but in the environment, what I've set up is actually SMS first, Teams, then maybe email, more push communication channel strategies versus pull. So let me send this out. Now I've got my Kelly's logged in the browser environment in Outlook, so you can see how that comes through. She's also logged into Teams, so you can see different channels and how this communication can come through. This is in the Teams environment because Kelly's preferred channel is Teams, and so when you get a message through Teams, it looks something like this. There's a bot that gives you some notification, and it says, "Hey, there's a return to work guide. View this to read more details." And so if I click through, can take me right to that. Hey, there's detailed plans on it. Please, if you can socialize this with your team, yeah, take me there to go learn more about it. It's taking me right to that work action plan. This is a sample document. It's not exactly tied to the branding of Blue Water, but you get the point. Now, if I look at another user, a leader, or my manager, one of those managers that as they convert and work on and get that message on different channels like email or Teams, what I can do now as a person communicating is I can see that history. So I'm just going to refresh my screen here. But if I go in here, there's now a history view and I can see previous communications to different audiences. So what I've done here is I've just sent out a message right now, literally a minute ago, to these different audiences, and I can understand what the conversion rate's like. Are people getting that message? Are they reading that? If I go more deeply into it, I can click on here and I can see specifically what channels they're engaging on. Are they engaging over email, Teams? Who's converted? Kelly converted, she converted over Teams. You just saw me show you that. But for other people, that might be email. So this gives you a sense of how you can support your communications using push channels on top of your pull strategy.
Question for you, Rob. So what if we don't want to allow users to control their priority?
That's a good question. So the way that you can control your channel preferences through your profile today, the way that that's done is by just dragging and drop different preferences. So for Kelly, she's got Teams first, email, and her mobile set up. Now, only admins have access into here, typically are working here to manage preferences. However, when people get their first communication or their communications or email, they can manage preferences. So essentially what we have to do is work to eliminate the option to manage preferences to the end user if we wanted to do that. Generally speaking, though, we're trying to empower the end user to have some control over their communication preferences under normal priority situations. So I hope that helps address it. But so right now you can't turn this off. generally we're trying to encourage users for normal communications to control their preference. Was that a question that came up, or is that a good question from you?
That was just a question from me. Thanks, Rob.
Oh, okay, good. Hopefully there's some questions rolling in still from the group, and I'm not sure if you've seen some there, but we'll get to them as we get through.
Not yet, but they'll be coming.
So when you're configuring this feature, which is basically essentially, it's like a distribution tool, right? It's allowing you to distribute your content using push channels. And it's a really quick setup. It integrates into your intranet. It integrates informations around your users, email address, mobile number, those kinds of things it needs to support the communications, as well as things like the lists or groups that they're part of. So these can come from 365. These can come from your intranet departments, lists, or locations. And so I'll show you a couple other examples of using other groups and getting that communication insight. One of the key things you're going to do is set up your channel strategy. So I had done this ahead, and our default is for normal to cater to the employee preference. There is other channel strategies you can use based on priority. So now I'm going to show you one around urgent messaging. So urgent messaging right now, it's configured to be a specific order. So we're going to go SMS first. Maybe I'm going to go to Teams second, and email third. You could do other things like, send through all channels. I want to flood the communications to everybody to make sure that everybody gets it. Now, the pro of that is you're probably going to get really rapid awareness of what's happening. The downside of it is that people, when they convert one channel, they're still going to have that message, in another channel that basically they've already got it. So there's that opportunity for you to configure what works for you and your needs. But so for me, I'm going to use a specific order, and I'm going to go SMS, Teams, and email. Now, if one of your users is not configured with a mobile number, it would skip SMS and it would go straight to Teams. If they didn't have Teams, it would go to email. So this goes based on channel activation for your profile or for your users, just to answer maybe some things that are going through people's mind. So let's go through an example of a more urgent communications. So I have one that I'm going to do, which is, let's just do a news announcement. Now, when you have something that's more urgent, you want to get it out quick, but you also want to make sure that you have some place to bring people back to for ongoing updates, right? And so what I want to do here is quickly just say, hey, we have a power outage at our HQ. More details. I don't have a lot of rich content to show you here, but you can imagine you could add a little bit more. Now, I'm going to save that. And one of the nice things I can do is I can now go and push that to my audiences. So, oh, what happened to my bar? Where did it go? So for 1 second. Ah, there we go. So after I publish something, it asks me, do I want to send some push communications? If I want, I can dismiss this. Maybe I don't want to do that. But in this particular case, this is a more urgent situation that I want to get out. In this case, it's not affecting all users. Again, push strategy are generally not all staff messages. Of course, you can use it for all staff communications, but they're generally more tailored, and you're trying to cater specific audiences. So in this case, I'm going to target the head office, people that I know that are part of the head office location. I don't think I have an image of a power outage handy. I did have one around inclement weather. So let's just imagine this is a power outage that's coming from a tornado. Let's get through that. And put some content. So what I can do here is send that out. Now, because I picked an urgent priority in that channel strategy of SMS, Teams, and more push channels first, what's actually happening is when I look back at that history on that communications, I'm able to see how that's being converted on across those other channels. So right now, no, I haven't done any conversion on it yet, but what you're going to see is the channels that it's going over are different. It's now going over SMS to people's mobiles. For people that don't have mobiles, it's going to Teams, and we're going into much more push-oriented communication channels versus something like maybe email, which is kind of sometimes a little bit in between, and then intranet. So I don't have a soft phone on me. I do have my phone in my pocket, and I can just show you. I got a message. I don't know if you can see. But anyway, you saw it on the slide deck before the example, and I can click through and I can convert on that and that sort of thing. So I quickly got it. Now, this is really great for a lot of different types of urgent communication situations, and which are coming more commonly these days. Whether or not it's some kind of cybersecurity event, maybe it's a power outage, inclement weather, health outbreaks. There's lots of these types of situations happening these days, and so typically organizations are facing these kinds of situations more commonly. And now you have something that you can do directly from within your intranet to reinforce that, to send those quick communications and push, but also reinforce updates of what's going on. So you can imagine later on, if I come back, I've got this key content and it says, hey, see more details, right? People can add comments. Yep, got it. Whatever you want to put there. You can have social elements or not. But if I want to go and create an update, I can come back in here and say, hey, update. Now, again, bear with me, my content's terrible. But generators came on, and now we have full power back as an example. So I'm going to save that. So I've updated my content. I want to send out a new communication to people. I can change the photo saying something like, hey, we're back, or whatever that is. I'm going to just grab one, which is a picture from the beach. It says, all is well. It seems like a happy place after something more stressful. So I'm going to send out a new message, and this is going to go back to my head office people.
One thing to mention as well about the push messaging over text specifically is it can help reach some workforce that are on the ground or contractors that might not have email addresses or access to your intranet.
Yes, good point. All right. So I've sent out a secondary update. Imagine this is hours later, and things have gone well. And you can see now I've got in my history 2 messages. I had the power outage, now I have power back on at our headquarters. Imagine that people are actually engaging with this. I don't have some bots in the back to go and do those conversions for me, but you would see those conversion and people getting that message across those different channels. So to Isaac's point, you can have users, emails, or other accounts that maybe aren't necessarily full-time year-round or full-time employees. Maybe you have contractors or volunteers or different audiences as well. So that's the nice thing here is you can very much tailor your communications around a piece of content to different audiences. Yeah, so that's a couple of different examples from both the more normal type of communications to maybe more urgent type priority communications.
Question for you, Rob. How would I send out a more detailed piece of communication? Let's say a newsletter that has multiple stories built into one instead of just a quick blip.
Yeah, that's great. So one of the things that comes with this push feature that's works with their intranet is we have different templates for messages you can send through the tool itself. I was kind of working on an example one just minutes before here. Started putting together a kind of a multi-message or newsletter style of communications. You can customize this and brand it and change the labels and stuff, but I had done some different things around maybe you have a weekly summary or a bi-weekly summary on the most important updates for the organization or for different groups. You may have people that have their own kinds of summaries they want to do. It's a great way to do that. There's different templates like this. So just to give you a preview, this is an example of the Wave newsletter. It's got some different stories people can click on. The nice thing as well here is these aren't just one-way communications. This is about two-way conversation and creating some feedback loops. So you can get feedback in two different ways. You can get feedback in anonymous form, things like sentiment. What you're seeing here is a kind of quick feedback or sentiment poll around, is this helpful or not? It's not in name. It allows you to get some sense on how people are feeling about the content they're getting. And we have a number of different Likert scales related to communication. So are they satisfied with the communications? Do they approve? Are they aware of this initiative? So those kinds of common Likert scales. The other thing you can do is actually do in-name feedback. So just generally feedback, comments, questions, those kinds of things, quick polls, or even maybe an action button that they need to specifically go and do something. You can link to things. It might be something on your internet, it might be something off internet. Maybe they gotta go do open enrollment in an HRS or things like that. So not only do you get specific content messaging, Isaac, back to your question, you can also do some kind of collated content communications on a regular basis, which is another good tactic within your communications approach.
You can almost think about it like a MailChimp built for internal purposes.
That's right. All right, so I do have lots of other examples I could go through, but probably you get a good sense, and it'd be good to leave some time for Q&A. You know, I just want to summarize that this works with any kind of content on your internet. So whether or not that's, you know, a news, a document, an event, you know, I had an example here of maybe some leadership training available. There's upcoming sessions, you know, maybe you want to promote that to specific audiences and get them to sign up. So it's a really useful tool to grow your engagement or your utilization of your internet, but bring things to the people that it's relevant for them, right? So it is around that full service approach. And yeah, I think that's probably a good place to stop. It's probably enough to show. I had like 6 examples, but it's probably enough. Maybe it's getting people's wheels turning around different ways they could use this. So let me hop back here. I'm gonna just come back and just summarize what are the key benefits here for you. So 1, time savings is absolutely something that you'll recognize right away. I don't have to go separately to Teams, post in a URL, or send a message, then go create content, then link it back and say, here's where you go for ongoing updates, those kinds of things. You know, in different types of situations, again, urgent or normal communications, you can create these default strategies and let the system just do the work for you. I didn't even show you yet, but things like reminders. If people aren't converting, you can open up the activity. You can manually send out reminders, and reminders only go to people that haven't already converted. So you're not nagging people to do something or be aware of something if they've already engaged with your message. So that's another nice benefit from an experience perspective. Obviously, you got integration here, so it's saving you time because it's integrating those tools, and it gives you some contextual insight. What I mean by that is I don't have to go searching through where I've been communicating from, try and get that insight. It's all within one place where my content lives. I can see all the different channels I'm engaging on and where they're coming from. Not only on a per message basis, you can get into a more data dashboard and look across your communications to see how different audiences are engaging around communications, around different themes. So maybe it's a certain initiative or project, that sort of thing. You can see I'll show you a data dashboard here quickly. And that's the second point, is insight, right? Not just insight on per message, but on insight across your communications. That allows you then to come back to, you know, leadership and say, this is how we're performing today. This is what our response rates rate. So earlier in the conversation here, we had maybe half of us didn't know what sort of response rates we have for communication. Now you'll know. You can definitively answer that, and you can know what people's channels they prefer, where they're converting on, what time of day is best to send messages. All those kinds of insights come within the tool. For those in the kind of technology or managing budget around technology and that sort of thing, the nice thing here is you don't need to have other third-party services. You might have today, or might be considering, some SMS-like or emergency or urgent kind of communication tools that are kind of a bolt-on, and people don't necessarily know how to use them. They don't use them very often, so they're not very familiar. The usability or ease of use in the time of need can be more challenging. Sometimes they're credit based. You might be worried about how many credits you have in there. And when I need to send my communications out, am I using up my credits? Is there an auto refill? What kind of contractor setup do I have? What kind of costs are going to come in there? And so you can reduce that or eliminate some of those kinds of things. And the support and maintenance of this is quite easy, as you can tell. It's really simple to pick up this tool and set up some channel strategy and start communicating and leveraging your existing some of your existing channels like email or Teams or things you're growing into. And we've got plans to obviously integrate with other channels down the road. So let me just show really quickly around insights, because I did miss that. I'm going to show you back that environment. If I come into the data dashboard, I don't have a lot of messages and content here right now. By default, it's just showing it the week view. But for different communications that are happening, I can see what's my conversion rate typically like. It's really low right now because I don't have people converting on this. But this will help you answer those questions. What kinds of time of day are they converting? What channels are they converting from? And that sort of thing. And you can start to filter down by, like I said, themes, initiatives, projects, ongoing operational groupings, that sort of thing. So you can bring some organization to your communications and then report on that. So I will finish there and come back to questions. So the next one is questions. So if you have some Q&A or any questions that have come up, I don't see any open questions right now. Are you seeing any, Isaac, right now? I didn't see the chat. I wasn't looking at the chat.
I am not.
Chat.
Or if anybody wants to hop on the mic, you're more than welcome. Put your hand up and we'll call on you. What are conversion rates? We had a question on that.
Perfect. Yeah, so conversion rates, I believe right now are contextual in that if there's nothing, it's not linking to anything, your conversion will be based on you reading it. And so we have different places. So our message is being delivered, are people converting on that? And sometimes if you have an action, you're linked to an action, like you need people to go and fill in open enrollment, the conversion will be based on them actually clicking and going there. So it'll be contextual based on the use case. I hope that answers the question.
Any more questions? Last call. Looks like that might be it, Rob.
All right. Just giving it a minute. Any other questions? Any other chat? I see you're in the chat there. Can people find the question button? Hopefully sometimes it's hidden. If you don't have a question, if you don't have to put the question in the question piece, just throw it in chat too. That totally works. Hopefully today you learned a little bit about push versus pull strategies and got a sense from early on, in your filling out some of those polls, a sense, maybe where you are today, where some of those opportunities lie. And we'd love to talk to you more about maybe some challenges facing the things you're thinking. If you have questions specifically you'd like to talk to us directly out of this, be more effective, have a conversation, where it'd be great to get into more one-to-one conversations too. So
yeah, especially if you were on the kind of poor to very poor side of the push communication strategy. Happy to talk more about your environment and how some of this can be best applied in your organization specifically.
Yeah, and we'd love to get some of your feedback too, what your takeaways were from today or any things you'd like to see. We're always listening to our customers and people that are engaging with us to understand how we can make things even better and serve their needs. So I would love to hear any feedback you have after the webinar as well.
One more question here, Rob. So the internet can connect to MS Teams. I can answer that right away. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so it connects to Microsoft Teams, Slack, email at the moment, and text. Like Rob mentioned, we're working on other channels. So if you have ideas for things that you'd like to be released in this platform, we'd love to hear it from you. But yeah, we link right from the internet. We can send messages out through Teams, like Rob is showing you right here on his screen.
Yeah. Thanks, Isaac.
Okay. That looks like it's it for the questions. Any more, then I'm happy to field them in the meantime. If you need to email me directly, it's isaac@internetconnections.com.
Excellent. Well, we're early on the hour, which is great. It's nice to give people a little bit of time back in their day. Look forward to reconnecting with you guys again, and hope you gained something from today's webinar. Thanks very much for your time, and hope you enjoyed. Take care.
Thanks, everyone.